This week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer is sponsored by Westworld FM, the latest podcast from the Midwest Podcast Network. Westworld FM seeks to dissect the latest episode of HBO's Westworld TV series every week. Join Alex and Nick as they take a deep dive into the latest TV show from producers Jonathan Nolan and J.J. Abrams. New episodes of the podcast are available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more the day after the TV show airs. Check out the show at westworld.fm or search for Westworld FM on your favorite podcasting service. And thank you to Westworld FM and the Midwest Podcast Network for sponsoring this week's episode. This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show, each episode. You can find back episodes at ovpodcast.com, find the blog at obsessiveviewer.com, and you can like us on Facebook and join the Facebook group at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer. And today on the podcast, Tiny and I are going to be discussing a couple like random picks from our Netflix queues, which you heard about last week in our Starbase Indie panel. But before we do that, I have some housekeeping and a couple little pieces of news to kind of go over here. First of all, a couple weeks ago on the podcast, Tiny, we put the call out to see if people wanted us to drop the censor beeps that have been part of the podcast since the beginning for some weird reason. Yep, and we got some good feedback.
That call was fucking answered.
Right? See? Oh, we're spurring now. We're growing from kids to fucking obnoxious teenagers, essentially. Eventually we'll become adults. But yeah, so we heard you guys, the censor beeps, they're done. That's going to help me with editing a little bit, because I had to put each one of those in individually.
Sorry, most of them were me.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, because like, it's after 150, however many episodes, 195 episodes, I think we've gotten into a rhythm where it's like I don't know, with me, and this is a tangent, and this doesn't need to last that long, but, I don't really feel the need to like use vulgarity, not because it's like anything that offends me or anything. I don't care. But I've kind of grown accustomed to working around it over the last 3 years. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes, going forward.
If you use it too much, it loses its luster.
It really does. And that was one of my big reasons for, I guess, keeping around the censor beeps. I don't know. Kind of a peek behind the curtain. We did it because friends of ours were doing it on their podcast, but they were also on like AM radio.
Right.
And we kind of thought like, okay, well maybe we can get into like what they were doing, but I mean they were political podcasts, were movie and TV, so
right.
That never came to be, and then we just kind of kept them, and I don't know. But now we're done. We're done with the censor beeps. So
word.
Yeah. So let's go into some news. Yeah. So, real quick, Rogue One ticket pre-sales, they went on sale a couple weeks ago. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I believe. So, yeah, a couple weeks ago. And, tickets, hundreds of thousands of tickets were sold within minutes.
That's insane.
It is insane. And it really made me wonder why they waited so long to announce the ticket sales. Cause it was like the sale date was announced like, I mean, the Thanksgiving weekend, and they went on sale that night, that Sunday night. So, I don't know.
It's weird.
Kind of weird.
Yeah.
And our friend Fecus got a whole group together to get tickets. So I got my ticket. You're not going to be partaking in that this year, are you?
I'm not, because of work.
Gotcha.
I prefer to have a day off the next day if I'm going to stay up till 2 a.m. or whatever, so couldn't do that this year.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. And fortunately, I started my job in May, so I still have like my PTO kicked in after 90 days, and so I had a full year's worth of PTO about 7 months into the year. So I'm taking the day off afterwards. So
not bad.
Yeah, so it'll be good. It'll be interesting, and we will be reviewing it on the podcast. the week after. When are you going to be able to see it? Like that weekend? Do you think?
I am. Yeah.
Nice.
Incidentally, I have the Monday, the 19th off. It comes out on the 16th. I have the 19th off, so I'm going to get tickets for a matinee and go see it with not a bunch of people there. It'll be kind of nice.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. And I know that IMAX screenings, 70 millimeter IMAX screenings, we talked about this off the air, but we don't need to stay on it that long. But 70 millimeter IMAX screening. So if you're in Indianapolis, the Indiana State Museum essentially is your only chance for this. They're going to be screening, I think it's 7 minutes of Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk before it. Are you going to spring for that, or just go to regular theater?
I'm gonna. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
I'll try. I mean, if I can get the tickets for that, I'll definitely do it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that they have assigned or reserved seating there.
Yeah.
So yeah, let us know. We'll cover that.
Cool.
And then finally, the last piece of news for this week is that the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 trailer hit. It's they call it a teaser, but it's 2 minutes and some odd seconds. So yeah. I think it's mostly teaser just because it doesn't give away any plot or anything.
Yeah.
So what did you think of this trailer, Tiny, or this teaser?
It was really encouraging. First of all, it looks gorgeous.
It really does.
I mean, as soon as I started playing it on my phone, and 15 seconds in, I paused it and then streamed it to the Apple TV so I could watch it on our new 4K television.
Right.
Holy crap, it's gorgeous. It's just beautiful. And secondly, it looks like, to me, I think one of the most important things they could do is maintain the comedy of the first one. Mm-hmm. Don't lose sight of that, because I think it's one of the best things about the movie. Absolutely. And just the 2-minute trailer was really funny. Mm-hmm. So I hope it looks like they're going to maintain that. So it was encouraging. Oh yeah.
Drax at the end.
Yeah.
Like that. It's such a silly thing. It's incredibly silly and absurdist to an extent, but I feel like I shouldn't have found it as funny as I did, but I did, and I was replaying that part of the trailer several times. I can never get enough of it. I think just Dave Bautista having that much happy energy, gives me life. Yes, it's fantastic, and I mean, Baby Groot. I mean,
yeah, it's cute.
Yeah, the part in the trailer where he's just like, "I am Groot, I am Groot," and going to kind of like a child trying to get not understanding a command or trying to get around a command by just saying something cute. That's what it got to me when he was trying to push the button in the trailer. That just won me over. Yeah. Just I can't wait. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know. It could be complete garbage. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. So that does it for news for this week. And really quickly, just another piece of housekeeping here. Here in a couple weeks, or in a few weeks, I think at this time, Tiny, I think we're still going to do this. You are going to be a guest on my solo side project podcast anthology, right? You still going to do that? Good.
Tote bags.
Yes. Nice.
I don't know.
So yeah, Anthology is my solo side project podcast where I review The Twilight Zone. I'm going to have Tiny on to talk about an episode of a TV show, one of Serling's early works, essentially, Rod Serling. So we're going to have fun doing that. And
I thought it was Sterling.
Oh, you son of a bitch!
I couldn't not.
That was good.
Yeah. He is famous for the silver screen.
I don't... Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
So this week on the podcast...
I'll just go.
Yeah. No, we'll promote that as it comes more, and check the Facebook page for Anthology at facebook.com/anthologypod. Anyway, this week on the podcast, as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing Netflix picks. And Tiny, how do you feel about the prospect of us doing Netflix picks again? What do you think of this format of doing Netflix picks? Because in the past we've done different formats. This one is a new one in which, I guess, do you want to explain how we did it this time?
Yeah, this time it was different because basically we just traded phones and looked at each other's cues and we just picked something for the other one.
Yes.
So I think that was fun because I think at some point we will torture one another with it. Like you'll make me watch Glitter or something. I don't know.
Yes. Why would Glitter be on your list?
let's not get into those details, Matt. It ruins the majesty of. So I got them. No, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. I like this method a lot more too, and I think going forward we will probably be doing it like this from now on. Because in the past we just did random numbers, and those were fun. But I like that this has a little bit of a personal connection. Like, you picked this movie for me to watch, so I think that we get some more, some better conversation out of it, rather than throwing in, like, okay, here, Tiny, watch this random documentary about dung beetles that you have on your queue for some reason.
I'd watch that.
I'm sure you would. So yes, I like that we are injecting a little bit of our idea of each other's taste into picking this time around. And I'm sure that anyone listening can take what I just said and edit it around to make it sound dirty.
Nice.
So I'm not necessarily challenging you guys, but it's there.
Well, let's get into this big old one.
Oh, God.
I don't know. I was trying to think of something. That was bad.
Oh,
that was really bad.
All right. Well, hopefully you don't, I picked a documentary for you, and hopefully you don't shove that down my throat.
Yeah.
Well, this is, anyway.
Oh, boy.
So, Tiny, do you want to go first, or should I?
I can go first.
Okay, go nuts. I picked for you to watch Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made. And, so I picked this for you. I think that we should start out by talking about why we picked it for each other.
Yeah.
So I picked this for you because I watched this at Heartland a couple years ago, or the last year, and I loved it. I adored it, and it was a really well put together documentary, and it spoke to me and it resonated with me. And I know that you're a fan of documentaries, and we also had the parameter that we can't, like, it would have to be a movie that we would have to watch. So that made me scroll past Black Mirror really quick, and sadly, because I really wanted to make you watch Black Mirror. And the plot description for Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made, according to IMDb, is a documentary of the story behind Raiders of the Lost Ark, the adaptation, which was a a fan film made by a group of kids that was made incrementally throughout the years of their childhood, essentially. And the documentary chronicles their attempt to film the final scene of their fan film as adults. I think it was 30 years later?
Yeah, 30 years later.
Yeah. So, Tiny, what did you think of Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made?
I loved it.
Nice.
I was pretty sure I was going to anyways. I heard so many people praise it up and down, including you, during Heartland last year. I was really bummed I didn't get to see it. It was one of the first things that stuck out to me when I was looking through the booklet of available movies to see, and I really wanted to go see it. Timing just did not work out.
Right.
So I was really bummed I didn't get to see it, but I'm so thrilled. Again, Netflix is so dedicated to the documentary format. I was really hoping it would end up on Netflix, and sure enough, it did. Mm-hmm. It's been in my queue for a while. I've been meaning to watch it, and I'm glad you forced me to, because it was so charming.
Nice.
And the movie is about, part of it's kind of telling the backstory about these kids shooting this movie over 7 years. Part of it's that, and then part of it is just the obstacles involved with filming this final scene, which is technically the most challenging because it involves a plane exploding, and a big fight scene and all this stuff and pyrotechnics, and that's just, you don't want a bunch of 16-year-olds doing that. That's not a good idea.
Right.
And it's expensive. So it goes through all of that, which I find really fascinating. It takes them 2 weeks to film this, and I think and even in the real film world, this scene probably took them a week to film, like Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford back in 1980, whatever. Filming this thing probably took them a week to do it. So that's kind of impressive when you think about it. What's amazing is what they come up with, what they film is so good. It is shot for shot, on the money of the original movie. And as they were showing it, I was like, this is just so fun to watch. Like, I really, really, really want to see their version of Raiders. Like, I would love to see it.
Yeah.
And the documentary gets into that. It's one of the featured talking heads, if you will, is Eli Roth, who saw the movie, you know, back in the day when someone just had a copy of it, and they kind of go into the whole like underground videotape world where you would just kind of bump into somebody or, you know, talk to a friend at a video store and they'd hand you a VHS of this random movie that's a bunch of kids doing a shot-for-shot remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you're like, that is retarded. Why do you have that? And then you watch it and you can't stop laughing and you have a blast of a time. And it turned into a thing, an underground thing, and that's a whole other charming part of the story and really fun part of the story. And it also happens to be a very well-made documentary. I like the way they intersperse the backstory with the challenges they're facing now, 30 years later from when they first started. I think they mesh those two things together really well. The two main guys who do this fan film are really, like, I say they were really well-rounded characters, but they find a very they find a way to bring these guys to life, and you feel like you know these guys and you completely understand and empathize with their passion. The two guys are Chris Strompoulos.
Yeah.
Chris Strompoulos. That's probably really wrong. And Eric Zala. These are the two guys who are buddies who filmed this thing. And just the evolution of their friendship across 30 years is really fascinating. There's just so many really good and deep, like, little stories amongst the big story. And I think that's what just makes it a really fun documentary. I really loved it. And like I said, I wish they could find a way to distribute their fan film. But I mean, I'm sure there's pretty much no way to do it because of licensing rights and everything. I'd love to see it. I think it'd be really fun. And, I just love the documentary. I love the passion behind it and the drive that these kids had to film this thing. And 30 years later, they're literally sitting in some random rich guy's living room asking him for money to cut him a check so they can build a World War II Nazi plane and blow it up. Like, that is the American dream.
It is.
Especially if you're a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And the movie just captures that so well. It's a really Paige, my fiance, just kind of happened to walk in like 15 minutes and she's like, what are you watching? She sees these kids like setting their mom's basement on fire. She's like, what are you watching? And I told her, and she sat down and watched it and she loved it.
Nice.
So I mean, and she's not even a big movie person, so that I mean, that she doesn't like documentaries that much either, so that kind of tells you how accessible it is.
Right.
It's really great.
It's that could have been, this is so dumb. They could have been a really awkward moment where she's like, what are you watching? And then you're like, oh, I'm watching this documentary about this video, but with a bunch of kids in it.
Yeah. These bunch of kids being really violent.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things about the documentary that I really loved was that it intercut the present day struggles of getting the financing to create this last shot, or this last scene. It intercut that with footage, not only footage of the fan film that they made as children, but it intercut it with footage of behind the scenes from the filming of it. So like you said, when they're setting the house on fire, it's like, it's so amazing because it's like these are moments that are unbelievably tense. That would be like, you watch that and you're like, how like, it's a miracle these kids didn't kill themselves.
Yes, it is. And
they have like no supervision at all, but since it's about the nostalgia of the characters or the subjects, and it's set in the past, like, it takes away that tension and it replaces it with this really fun, like, kind of I hesitate to say voyeuristic, but this kind of like, you're kind of a voyeur of their nostalgia. You're viewing their childhood in a very unique way. And there's a moment kind of late in the documentary where they talk about how how they didn't realize it at the time, and this soundbite, this like got me choked up in the theater when I saw it last year. But they're like, we didn't realize it at the time, but we weren't making a fan film, we were filming our childhood.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that is incredible. Like, who has that experience that they have? That they, like, any, as kids, you have like your hobbies. Like, you either go ride bikes somewhere, or you play a sport, or you sit alone in your room watching movies all day. Like, really obscure to your peers 50s Japanese samurai movies, but that's neither here nor there. But like, you chronicle it, like being able to, like, having a chronicle of that in such a unique and artistic way is really fascinating. And I like how they dive into some of the like what became of their dreams, essentially, in the lead up to getting the band back together, as it were.
Right.
I think that the way that documentary is put together is really well in constructing that narrative, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So I liked it a lot too, and I'm really glad that you finally had an excuse to watch it.
Yeah, me too.
And I remember that there was another documentary at Heartland last year that I was so convinced that you would and will love when you see it. And I just checked to see if it's on iTunes, or not iTunes, but on Netflix, but it's not. But Peace Officer, like,
yeah.
I still think you should check that. It's on iTunes, but
is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think you can rent it. But man, it's so good.
Good.
So good. I actually think it's on Hulu also, but you don't subscribe to Hulu, do you?
I do not.
Hulu, do you?
I who not.
Nice. Anyway. So cool. So yeah, that's Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made, on ObsessiveViewer.com. I'll put a link to the show notes in this episode to my review of it, but I rated it a 9.0 out of 10.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'd probably give it pretty much the same thing.
Nice.
Oh.
Nice. Yeah, so that so that's Raiders. It's on Netflix, and yeah, it's funny, and this is a slight tangent, kind of an interstitial kind of thing between the two things. But like, I realized when I was doing something with the website and everything, and I kind of realized that at like this entire year, 2016, I did not write a single review for the website.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and like it's mostly just, bringing Anthology back online, and new job and everything. It's like I don't have the time or resources to do that.
You're a cat father now.
I am a cat father also.
Yeah. Coolest superhero ever.
Oh, I know, right? It's like I didn't know that I had it in me to be a hero until I got a cat. That's ridiculous. The hardest job,
yes,
on the planet is being a cat father. That's ridiculous. And she got up and left because she heard how ridiculous it was.
That is perfect.
It is. Anyway, so yeah, maybe that's something that I can try to rectify in 2017, but I don't know if I'll have time to or not. Yeah, I don't know. So 9 out of 10 for Raiders. That's great.
Yep.
And Tiny, do you want to bring us into mine?
Yes, the next movie that Matt watched is Contact from 1997. Kind of a mixed bag in the sci-fi world. The synopsis, is that right? Synopsis.
Synopsis, yeah.
The synopsis for Contact reads, Dr. Ellie Arroway, after years of searching, finds conclusive radio proof of intelligent aliens who send plans for a mysterious machine. Much better synopsis than Raiders. Yeah, so I watched this movie a long time ago. Mm-hmm. The first time I ever saw this, my mom was like recovering from a surgery she had.
Okay.
And I was like 13 maybe.
Sure.
And my mom it was just on TV. My mom just watched it, and I had heard of it, but it just, I don't know, I never really saw it. And it really kind of blew me away as nice. A kid. And so that's kind of my connection to the movie. I saw it as a younger kid, so that's kind of my first exposure to it, and I think that's kind of why I have the opinion of it that I do. So,
Nice.
But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Matt, what did you think of Contact?
Okay, and why did you choose it for me specifically?
Because I think it's a sort of panned movie amongst the sci-fi community. I think it gets a lot of crap, and it's really kind of, I wouldn't even call it a guilty pleasure. I think it's just a good sci-fi movie, and I like it, and I wish more people were not so critical of it.
Nice.
You hated it, didn't you?
I didn't hate it. Okay, and it's I didn't hate it. I didn't really love it per se. I thought that it was pretty good. There were some good ideas in it, and it held my attention through most of it.
Okay.
Let me see. So the first thing that I'll say about it is that there's, like you said in the description, the alien and an alien communication comes to Earth, and Jodie Foster picks it up because she does that for a living. She works for SETI. Is that how you pronounce
it?
Yep,
SETI.
Yeah. So she's monitoring all these radio frequencies and stuff. And what I found most compelling about it, and this one specific scene was like a moment where I was like, this is really incredible, is that when we get the first transmission, she recognizes it as prime numbers. It's math. It's a universal language, and that's the way that they're communicating, and that alone is pretty clever. And then, and this stretches a little bit of, I guess not really stretching that much, but we get a video. The humans in the movie get a video transmission from the aliens. And Tiny, do you remember what this initial video was?
I believe it was a speech from Hitler, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which the reveal of that was really fascinating to me as a viewer, because you see this kind of this very static image, and you like, I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, are they going to show us, them? Like, are we going to see the aliens?
Yeah.
And then like, I'm kind of like, is that a swastika?
Yeah.
And then just the idea that, and this is mild spoilers for Contact, but it's not anything too severe. As it slowly reveals itself to be a speech from Hitler, it's fascinating to me because it is explained as this was, I think it was something like this was the first video signal or first like thing that was like aired or something like that.
That was like transponded over the air or something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
They explained it in a way that made sense in context of the movie. But it was something that was like, it was the first thing. It was him like announcing the start of the Olympic Games.
Right.
And just the idea of that, and this is something that I find fascinating, is the idea of human reaction to alien communication or alien arrivals, alien contact or alien arrival or alien signs or alien
Close Encounters of the Third
Close
Kind.
Encounters. Just like the human reaction. And I think that this movie has this very fascinating hook that this initial transmission, this initial video transmission from an alien race is Hitler, like the worst human being like in the 20th century. And just the idea of that like that confusion of like, what could that possibly mean? Like what are the aliens possibly trying to communicate by sending a video of Hitler to us? Like, this is not a good icebreaker at all, because like that can be construed as, do they not understand like obviously they can't understand like what that imagery and what that figure was to humanity, or is it that they understand and they are completely observant of us and they're like sending it to us as like a judgment, or they're making a statement about what they intend to do to the human race and things like that. But So like there are a lot of different avenues that they could have gone with, and a lot of really good reactions that could have been born from this initial contact in the movie Contact. Unfortunately, the movie doesn't really go anywhere with that. Like it just presents it and then it explains it as, oh yeah, it was like the first thing in the airwaves so they just bounced it back to us. They don't know anything. They're stupid aliens. Here's some schematics. Make your little ship. And that I think was kind of a letdown for the movie for me, is that they didn't really go into the human aspect of it as much as I would have liked them to. It's more, the movie becomes more about Jodie Foster's character's personal evolution and in her grappling with faith and not having faith, and it's kind of like a lot of science fiction. It kind of deals with faith versus science, and it does that in a pretty unique way, if not kind of heavy-handed. It eventually becomes, somewhat spoiler alert, a surprise courtroom drama at the end.
Yeah. Which
is one of my favorite, like, sub categories. The movie that doesn't have anything court-related, and then at the end it's just, hey, there's a courtroom scene. I still think we should do an episode about that, but I can't think of that many off the top of my head to justify it, so eventually we will. Mm-hmm. But, so the movie kind of has some things going for it, and where it leads is pretty interesting and thought-provoking. I had never seen this movie, but I had this idea in my head about what the ending was, and I won't give it away, I won't give away what happens or anything, but I had a very specific memory of, funny enough, Tiny, my mom watching the movie. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a common link, but I didn't watch it with her, and she wasn't, recovering from surgery or anything. Mm-hmm. But she was watching the movie, and I remember seeing like the kind of climactic sequence with Jodie Foster finishing the work that was, how to phrase that without spoiling it, the big moment at the end, that the big climax of the movie.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I've kind of carried that image with me. Like anytime I think of Contact, I think of those images, and I had a very specific interpretation of that based on what I'd seen. And I was very surprised to see that was not at all what I thought it was. I thought it was something completely different than what it ended up being. And I'm speaking very vaguely about it, but I was pleasantly surprised that it was more science fiction focused than it was faith focused, or religious focus, or spirituality. It didn't have spirituality at its center in the climax of the movie as I assumed it had after seeing some scenes like 10-15 years ago. So that had it going for it, and it engaged me. A couple other things I'd say is that, one, special effects don't hold up that well. I'm thinking in particular that scene that I vaguely referenced, and also I was very surprised that Robert Zemeckis was the director for this movie.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, I had no idea, and this is a movie that's based on a Carl Sagan novel, and it deals with some pretty hard science fiction. Yeah. And it's hard sci-fi. It deals with some heavy themes and everything. And I think part of me thinks that Robert Zemeckis may not have been the best choice for director for this movie, because he brought to it this kind of almost Spielbergian type of youthful optimism to the way that it was shot. It's the kind of this whimsical, like, energy to it. Like it's not very serious. I don't know if I'm really articulating that well, but it's like kind of an optimistic kind of style with the camera work and stuff, and it's not this like grounded, heavy, dramatic technique to it. Like the camera kind of whips around a little bit, and the music kind of swells in some kind of cheesy, nostalgic moments where we have flashbacks with Jodie Foster as a kid, and it's very kind of cutesy and heartwarming. The movie is presented more throughout the movie as a heartwarming kind of story than anything else, and that the closest description as I can have in the super vague and long-winded review is that it's Spielbergian. It's a Spielberg type of thing by way of Robert Zemeckis. Does that make any sense at all?
A little bit, and maybe if I haven't seen the movie in years, and maybe if I saw it again, I would get a better sense of what you're trying to say.
So everyone that hasn't seen it is just completely lost.
Right. I think I know what you mean about the optimism, though, and that, like, I get that.
Kind of like an E.T.-ish, kind of like it's a sense of wonder to it, and I don't know, it didn't really mesh well with what maybe it's more of my expectations than anything. It didn't really match my expectations because I was thinking that this would be a grounded and thought-provoking science fiction movie, which at times it is, but it kind of has this Spielberg-like quality to it.
I think, I definitely know what you mean. There wasn't a lot of hardship throughout it, not a lot of sacrifice. I mean, there's some emotional pain throughout it, and some heavy emotional things, but it's not like other science movies or space movies where people die and like really. I mean, there's some death, but it's not. It's I don't know. It's I don't know how to articulate it either, but I think I do know what you're saying. Yeah, so.
And I think Family Guy kind of ruined this movie for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One of my favorite actually one of my favorite episodes of Family Guy is the episode 3 Kings, which is the episode where it's 3 different stories all based on Stephen King movies, essentially.
Yeah.
So one of them is a parody of Misery, and in the parody, Stewie goes on this whole thing where he talks about how, like, Brian is in the role, James Caan role in the episode, and Stewie is in the Kathy Bates role. So there's a moment in both Misery and the episode where Misery goes into this whole thing and it's like saying like, no, you need to write better, and it's and they use an example like in the movie, it's serialized movies, or when she would go see serials as a kid, and in the show it's like, okay, you remember the movie Contact, and I don't know if I really want to go into it because it's kind of spoilery, but they talk about this big event in the movie that is completely, like, by all accounts it should completely destroy the narrative of the movie because it is the destruction of something, and it's like, nope, we had a whole other one, some other random person created a whole other one,
right? So
it's all good to go, and that's how it is in the movie, and that is so. It was a bummer to me.
Really?
Yeah, and the kind of to bring it also kind of back to Stephen King a little bit, even though he has no connection to Contact. But the moment, it's kind of a big inciting incident, or it's a big turn in the plot that something happens to derail the project that they're working on. And what I had a problem with was I was hoping that would be more suspenseful or more interesting. Like, we get the idea that something is wrong in the lead up to it, but I don't feel like when I say in the lead up to it, I mean like the 90 to 120 seconds before the event in the movie. Like, it didn't really build up that tension or that action too well throughout the whole movie. Do you remember what happened?
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. It is a plot hole, kinda.
Yeah.
Like they make the effort to emphasize the all the effort and all of the resources that go into this thing, and how it's like unheard of in scale, like in the history of mankind, and then some dude just does it by himself later on. Like, I know what you're saying, and like I get that, but for me, it doesn't ruin the movie, or it doesn't have that big of a negative effect on me when I'm watching it, anyways.
Sure,
but I do get that it is a plot hole. It's there are some other plot holes throughout the movie as well, but yeah, it still works for me.
Sure. Yeah. It was a fault for me.
Okay.
There was an interesting bit of special effects in this movie. And I actually found this article on, it's like deseretnews.com. But it was published July 20th, 1997.
Okay.
It's the title of it is Clinton in Contact is amusing despite what White House says. Do you remember what they did in this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, they cut together, like they cut speeches from President Clinton and inserted him into the movie.
Yeah.
In kind of a Forrest Gump kind of way.
Right.
Also by Robert Zemeckis. And
yeah,
it is so funny because like today we have the technology where we can make like Robert Downey Jr. and Captain America Civil War, even though I didn't think that the technology to age him down to show him inserting a young version of himself in it, I didn't think that was 100% great. I think it was a little uncanny valley, but like inserting things into movies today is like, that's something that's we maybe take for granted a little bit because the technology's there. Even though the one sort of example doesn't fit, but also like Michael Douglas and Ant-Man.
Right.
So this having it in 1997, it doesn't really hold up that well. It kind of sticks out kind of bad.
It does.
Yeah, and it's unique in that I was watching, I was like, I like what they were doing. Like there are shots of Clinton speaking on television, and those work pretty well. And it's funny the way that I don't think they necessarily cut around speeches, but they used like bits from speeches that could be repurposed to fit the context of the movie. So like he's speaking very vaguely, like this is a threat to humanity, and he's like saying like very vague things. So, but in context of the movie, it makes sense. And, it's really pretty interesting. In that alone is fine. Like having it on television is fine. But there are scenes where like, Jodie Foster and a bunch of people are in like a boardroom, and then Clinton comes into the room, and it's really awkward, and it took me out of the movie a little bit. And I'm gonna find a soundbite from this article. So bear with me here for a second. Like the justification for it. Like here's a quick quote from it. Steve Starkey, a co-producer of Contact, told the Los Angeles Times that presidential speeches are in the public domain. We didn't alter a word he said. We just digitally replaced the setting. We took him from the Rose Garden to the press room, and that's interesting. I mean, that's interesting that they did that at that time. Apparently the White House wasn't amused. And I kind of like this idea of like, and this is not a political statement. I'm just speaking in terms of just history. But it's funny that like, okay, yes, using the video of a sitting president in your film and repurposing his words for it, I can see, and I might cut this out. I can see how this is. I can see how this could be shown as like maybe tarnishing the name of like the presidency. But I think it's kind of funny that it's Clinton.
Yeah.
But
that's true.
Yeah, that I don't know. That's not meant to be political or anything. It's just I thought it was funny that apparently the White House had an issue with them using his image in this, and I would imagine that the reason for that issue is that there was there's a dignity to the office of the president,
right.
And given what happened in his presidency, I thought it was funny.
That is
not
funny.
a political statement, just a commentary on the humor of it. But so Contact overall, I didn't love it. It's like, and I'm a pretty harsh critic when it comes to science fiction, and I have kind of come to the realization that I started my, my movie watching habits around like horror movies and stuff. But I think now in the past, really since Lost, honestly, I've gotten more, like with each passing year, I've gotten more and more into science fiction. And I think that may be why I'm a little harsher on the science fiction genre, which is something we'll talk about in a bonus episode coming up pretty soon. But I view it through a more intensive lens. Like I pick it apart a little bit more than other genres, and maybe that's not fair to the vast majority of movies I watch, but I kind of hold them to a higher standard because I feel like the science fiction genre is not more important than other genres, but it's more important in delivering a message about where we are as a society, essentially. Maybe not more important, but I find that message to be of more, that's essentially the exact same thing I just said that it wasn't, to be of more import than other genres. But I latch on to that message a lot more in science fiction than any other genre if they make statements about humanity. And Contact, while it did have some interesting themes playing around with it, and it did explore those themes in somewhat heavy-handed but still pretty okay ways, it didn't really engage me that much. So I would say that it was, I don't regret watching it, but I don't know when I'll ever watch it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I think the themes you're referencing just worked for me, especially like I think again, seeing it as a 12 or 13-year-old, it's very the flaws and everything involved in the movie didn't stick out to me as much. Seeing it as an adult, they did, but I think my first reaction to it, or my the childlike wonder, I guess, it sticks with me. It's almost nostalgic, I guess. So I think that's why I have that opinion of it. And I love Carl Sagan. I feel like it has a lot of the themes and a lot of the ideas that he championed as a scientist in the 20th century. I think he was integral. He was integral to the place that science has, in nowadays today, and
the
so
conversation of humanity. I guess.
It's place in amongst the zeitgeist, if you will. I think he's partially responsible for that. So I'm a big Sagan fan, and I think this movie uses a lot of his words and ideas to really good effect. And it was very inspirational to me, and it still is. So yeah, that's why I still like Contact. Nice. I
appreciate that, and it's funny we referenced my cat earlier. If I keep that in, it's funny. This is for no one, but when I adopted my cat last year, actually almost exactly a year ago, the organization that they had the adoption event at was at a bookstore here in Indianapolis, and they had like some weird thing where it's like, okay, well, it's like a used bookstore. It's like, hey, if you adopt a cat, get a free book too. Out of these like certain ones, and the book that I got was Contact.
Nice.
And I haven't read it yet, so that's a bummer. Was ultimately meaningless, but I feel like, that's worth mentioning, I guess. I'll shut up now. So yeah, that's our Netflix picks this go around of it.
Cool.
So, as usual, we're going to round out the podcast with our Potpourri section, which we call it Potpourri because it's the section of the podcast where we talk about whatever we want, anything we're watching, anything we're looking forward to. The catchphrase of it is anything we want as long as it smells good. And Tiny, you have one thing, two things? A trailer and one thing?
I have two, but they're super short.
Okay. Do you want to start out with one, and then I'll put mine in between us?
Okay, sure.
In between you? I don't know. Again, edit the audio around that. So,
sure. Okay. The first thing I wanted to mention, this is brief and it's silly. If I am unabashedly a big fan of Christmas, which is weird on many levels, but I love Christmas, and I like cheesy Christmas movies and shows. I don't think
that's that weird, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, like, given my my opinions on Christianity, it's funny.
That's true. That is true.
That's funny.
But the spirit of Christmas.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I like commercial Christmas.
There you go.
And so like I'm a sucker for special episodes of television shows and whatnot, and even just TV specials, which there was one that I watched this year that came out on ABC Family. They've done it before. It was filmed at the Opry in Nashville, which is a historic stage. Some of the biggest stars in the world have played there. It's one of the more famous stages in the world, and it was a really good setting for this, but it was CMA Country Christmas, which is a bit of a misnomer because there were not just country stars there. And
okay.
Yeah, but it was hosted by Jennifer Nettles, she's a lead singer of a band called Sugarland, and they're a country band, and she's done this a couple of years now. I think she's hosted the CMAs, and she's hosted this Christmas special like 4 or 5 times over the past 6 or 7 years, something like that.
Is it like a live, like a variety show thing?
Yeah, it was like musical performances and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, but like I said, it wasn't just country artists. They had like Kelly Clarkson there, and Sarah McLachlan, and Amy Grant, and Idina Menzel, or Adele Dazeem. But then they had country artists like Jennifer Nettles and Kelsey Ballerini, Brett Eldridge, and stuff like that. But it was just really fun. I'm just like a sucker for that kind of stuff, and they had like fun renditions of your regular classic Christmas songs and stuff like that. There were some really good ones. Linking it to TV and movies, the winner of The Voice was on there. That's
a loose link there, Tiny.
It is. It's a television show, though. It's the winner of a television show.
Sure.
So I don't watch The Voice. It's not really my thing, but he was freaking awesome. Jordan Smith was his name. He did a really good rendition of the Mr. Grinch song.
Oh, okay.
It was really good. So yeah, it was fun. It's really cheesy. It's on demand if you have on demand with your cable. That's how I watched it. Again, it's cheesy, and like you can absolutely make fun of me, and I will not try to defend it. But it's fun. I get really sappy this time of year.
And that's fair. That's totally fair. Yeah. I would never begrudge you your Christmas fandom. And I'm the same way. I love the Christmas season. Like, there's something about it, like the way that Christmas is represented. Like you said, the commercial aspect of Christmas. Mm-hmm. Like, it's something that I get, like, it's deep in my like nostalgia. Like, I get nostalgic for that. For a time in my life when whenever this time of year comes around, and it's special to me. I like it. What's interesting to me about this is, like, I didn't, like, you just said, like, oh yeah, I watched a Christmas thing. So I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, it's some made for TV, like, like narrative movie. That surprised me that CMA Country Christmas.
Yeah.
That's sure. And it's funny and we don't have to spend too much time on this because it's not relevant that much, but like when you were saying all of those names and stuff, like I'm not into music that much. Like, yeah. I don't discover new music. I find music that I hear in movies and TV, and that's how I discover my music. Like I have the Moana soundtrack, and the most recent things that I've added to my Amazon Music app, that's how I use like the digital music and stuff, was the score from, or the music, the instrumental music that's played in the Passengers trailer. Okay. So yeah, but anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying, like, are you normally like a country music fan?
Yeah. And again, I don't defend it because country kind of sucks. I mean, it's pop music with the South injected into it. That's what country music has mostly become. I appreciate more of the singer-songwriter era of country. Okay. Like Johnny Cash and Marty Robbins and some of the older guys. I prefer that more, and I think that's good music, I think. But like, it's basically the way I listen to country now is just, it's like, it's easy. It's just easy to listen to. I don't have to be invested in it at all. I just put it on in the car and listen to it in the radio on the way to work, and yeah,
not like anthology. Or
memorize
anything.
All the words and know all the songs. So yeah,
everyone has their own taste, and we're not a music podcast, and I'm not a music person, so I'm, whatever.
Right.
But it's just interesting to me. Like, have you ever seen Bo Burnham's country music?
Yes,
thing?
It's hysterical.
That is so perfect.
It's so accurate too.
It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
so. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's essentially Bo Burnham. It's part of his one of his stand up specials, and he's doing, I think it's the most recent one, Make Happy, that was on Netflix, and he's doing like a rendition of like his he's basically breaking down the components of a hit country music pop song, and he's breaking it down beat by beat, and it's like, it is masterful. Like,
it is.
This dude is a freaking genius.
It's called pandering, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what country music is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so great. So great. I'll put the link in the show notes, like I said. But that's interesting. CMA Country Christmas. That's cool. Check it out on demand, I guess.
There were some hot chicks in it.
Well, there you go.
I can defend it. Yeah, that Kelsey Ballerini chick is really hot.
Yeah.
She is.
Drinking beer and driving my truck. I don't know.
Shooting guns and, yeah. Small town.
Yeah.
That's in like every single country song. Small.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's, pandering.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually weirdly, don't ask why I went down this rabbit hole. I searched on Facebook for other Matt Hertz. And one of them is this guy that's like the most country looking guy ever.
Really?
Like, he's in like a cutoff shirt. He's got a rifle in his hand.
Wow.
A beer in his other hand or something. It's like, I'm like, oh my God, this is the farthest from, I almost said from real Matt Hertz.
He's the antithesis of Matthew William Hurt.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, so I made my list. I'm going to take them all out one by one. So, on the last one. That is dark.
That is dark, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, should I go ahead and go with my potpourri?
Absolutely.
Staying on like a not similar. Well, I guess this is anyway. This, I can't transition to this. So I went to the movie theater and I saw the latest Disney animated film, Moana.
Nice.
Yes, and this movie is very interesting to me because I went in with little to no expectations, really. The trailers didn't really do much for me. I remember seeing trailers for it and just showing that's like, it's Dwayne Johnson's character just introducing himself on screen in the trailer, saying like, I'm Maui, the demigod, and I do this and that, and I'm just like, okay, I might catch it if it's on Netflix or something.
Yeah.
But I heard some hype around it when it was released, and I was like, you know what? I should check this out. So I went and saw it, and it's gonna make my top 10.
Nice.
Maybe I can't commit to top 3, but I think it's gonna make my list.
Nice.
This movie was so much fun, and not only was it fun. First of all, with these Disney movies, past and present, I never get hung up on the music. It's kind of funny. This is kind of an interesting connection to what we were talking about with the CMA Country Christmas thing. But I'm just not a musical minded person.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate scores in movies. That's how I experience music. But when you have a Disney movie that has musical acts or musical breaks, like it's a musical. It's like a traditional Disney movie with musical breaks. I was so enthralled by the music in this movie.
Awesome.
It was so good. There's one song to kind of get a sense of how the music is. Well, not really get a sense, but there's one song with Dwayne Johnson. It's called "You're Welcome," and it's him basically. It's his character. He's this demigod who's has a very inflated opinion of himself, just telling the main character, "You're welcome" for everything that he does. It's like the most condescending and hilarious thing. And all the music is super catchy. And I know that a big part of the music was done by Lin-Manuel. Hang on, the guy who did the music for Hamilton, the Broadway musical. And I mean, I haven't heard the cast recording for Hamilton. I've heard really great things about it. But I've heard really great things about it, and I know that it's, really well respected. And I didn't know what to expect going into this, but Lin-Manuel Miranda, but Mark Mancina and Opatea Fawai, did the music for Moana. But
Okay.
Anyway, the music is fantastic. Like, I saw this like maybe a couple weeks ago, I think, and the music is still stuck in my head.
Nice.
And there's a great song with Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords that's so great. Like, the music is great. I'll stop lauding praise upon the music and talk about the actual plot. The plot description, according to IMDb, is: in ancient Polynesia, when a terrible curse incurred by Maui reaches an impetuous chieftain's daughter's island, she answers the ocean's call to seek out the demigod to set things right. So this movie takes the kind of tropish Disney princess archetype, and I feel like in a way it upgrades it to 2016.
Okay.
Like, this isn't a damsel in distress. Moana isn't this helpless girl who learns to become a woman in some contrived way. She is a very self-sufficient, assertive, adventure-seeking character. And I was very conscious of this watching it, that there are moments where she's in danger, like very real danger. And it's like the movie makes an effort not to have her be rescued by someone. It's always her own ingenuity and her quick thinking to get her out of these situations. And it's thrilling. It's really incredible, or it's really engaging and suspenseful to see a character that's not saved by a deus ex machina at the end of each action beat or each big set piece. It's like she's using, like, it's a clever thing, and it's sad that I'm singling out that she's a female character who is rescuing herself from danger so much. It's kind of sad that I'm bringing that up in 2016, but it's really impressive the way that it's handled, and it's handled in a way that's so just so organic, and it feels so right for the time that we're in, the climate of we are in society. Like, we're at a point where it's like, you know, this movie depicts a strong female character at the center of it, and it's about Polynesian lore and history, and it's not something like, it's not like a it's not like a whitewashed thing. It's like it's culturally respectful, I guess. I don't know. I think there is a little bit of controversy surrounding like the way that they interpreted some of the lore and like created it for like a Disney thing. But I mean, that kind of comes with the territory.
They do that with every movie.
Yeah, but anyway, all of this is to say, I'm putting my foot in my mouth, but all of this is to say that this movie was such a joy to watch. It was a lot of fun. There are elements of it that, to kind of go back to the whole princess trope thing, they actually, like, they make a little bit of a conscious reference to it, to like the thing that they're, like, the history of that type of character. And it's really cheeky and fun, but it also kind of really pinpoints how progressive the movie is in its storytelling of this character and this character archetype, really. And yeah, the adventure of it is so much fun. The chieftain's daughter, Moana, her people are isolated on this island, and they are essentially they don't seek out, they don't go into the ocean, or they don't explore or anything. And the whole impetus of the story is that Moana is this character who is so drawn to the ocean and drawn to exploration and stuff, but she's held back by her people's ways, or her people's way of life. So she's going out on this adventure, having never gone out in the ocean. It's really thrilling the way that it's all handled and everything. And yeah, and it gets to a really satisfying place, and it's a really incredible movie. I really implore everyone to go check it out, because it's really great. This is the type of Disney animated movie that seems like it's something that I would hope or think would be talked about for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's Moana. It's currently in theaters, and you can hear it in my earbuds while I'm doing things because I've been listening to the soundtrack over and over.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that. I'm excited to see it and eager to see it. There's a guy I work with. He and his wife are from Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
And like grew up there, and like they have 3 kids that have never been to Hawaii because they moved to Indiana, and it's really expensive to go to Hawaii.
Right.
So they've never been there, and so like it's hard for them to like demonstrate what their Hawaiian culture is like, and you know it's part of these kids' heritage, and it's hard for them to express that without being in Hawaii. And so they were super excited for this movie, and they went to see it like opening night with all their kids, and he really loved it, and like that was kind of my in for it because he talked about it in a really passionate way, and so I really want to see it too, and I'm glad that we don't really have a lot of movies about Hawaiian or Peloponnesian culture, so
right.
It should be a unique thing just because of that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
And yeah, I highly recommend it. Check it out.
Awesome.
And so, Tiny, you have one more thing.
Yeah, again, this is brief, but last week, being last week of November, the trailer for Martin Scorsese's latest project came out. It's a movie called Silence. The plot description on IMDb says, in the 17th century, 2 Jesuit priests face violence and persecution when they travel to Japan to locate their mentor and propagate Christianity. This is a project that Martin Scorsese's been interested in for like 30 years, literally. I think he's tried to get it made. He's had it cast. He's had a script for a while. He had it casted for a while. I mean, it's been in kind of production hell, to reference our panel topic at Starbase Indie. It's kind of been in production hell for a while, and it's finally coming out. And it's a pretty big passion project for Martin Scorsese. It'll be the 3rd time that he really tackles religion as a subject, and I think he's done it to great effect in the past.
He did Last Temptation of Christ.
And what was his other one?
What was the other one?
Kundun, I think. That one.
Oh yeah, Kundun in 1997.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was I only passingly saw that.
Yeah, I never saw it. I'm looking at the trivia.
Right.
Martin Scorsese's 3rd religion-based film after Last Temptation of Christ and Kundun.
Right. So I think Last Temptation of Christ was really cool, and I know that Martin Scorsese's religion is very important to him, and I think it affects him in some pretty deep ways. And he's been making, good movies over the past several years, but this seems like something he's really passionate about. Nice. And I think he's on the money when he's making movies like that. Like Wolf of Wall Street, I wasn't that crazy about.
Right, me neither.
And Shutter Island was, while a pretty impressive movie and kind of cool looking and a fun period piece, was just an okay movie in my book. But this seems like a passion project he's been going after for decades. So I think it could end up being one of his best, maybe one of the year's best. So I'm really looking forward to it. Check out the trailer on YouTube. It's kind of almost eerie, and it looks very grungy and gritty, and it looked like a grueling movie to make. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this movie.
Yeah, and I watched the trailer too, and something that stood out to me, and it's something that's kind of corroborated by this piece of trivia that I just read, but Adam Driver lost 50 pounds for the role. Yeah. 30 pounds before filming and 20 pounds during filming. And this is more just a comment on just the trailer, but like it's kind of off-putting to see him in this trailer.
Yeah, it is.
Like it looks like he's
grotesque.
Yeah, grotesque, really. Yeah. But it looks like it's going to be a really interesting movie, and I'll definitely check it out. And Daniel Day-Lewis was originally cast
right
in the movie, and it's that's a shame. But I mean, Liam Neeson's really good. So.
Yeah, he's a good get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully we'll be pretty taken with this movie.
Yeah. Nice. Oh man,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Kylo Ren.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, that'll about do it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer. Let's see here. Okay, if you like what you hear or like what you've heard and you want to support the podcast, the easiest way to do that, guys, is to go over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. It helps us out a ton. It gives us good feedback. It's really great to see. I don't check it that often, but I would love to like open up iTunes and be like, oh, hey, we got some reviews. So go ahead and flood iTunes with your reviews. Create fake usernames. Put in the reviews. I don't care. The more ratings and reviews that we get, the more visible we are, and the better it is for people to find us. Because if you just type in, movie podcast, and they see like our thing, and they see, oh, we have this many reviews or this many stars, it's like, the more reviews we get, the more substantial we are to people passing by in the store.
Cool.
Yeah. And if you want to support the podcast with your wallet, it is the holiday season, guys. Just saying. You can do that by clicking the donate button on obsessiveviewer.com for a one-time donation, or you can click the donate link in the show notes of this episode. And you can also become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for recurring payments, for different reward tiers. For different levels. So anyway, any donations made, they'll help us out a ton with paying the fees to keep the podcast running, because it's not really free. It's free to you guys, but on our end, we have to pay to keep it up and keep the RSS feed up and running. But anything that's paid to us goes directly toward that and helps us provide you with some hopefully entertaining podcasting. Going on 200 episodes. That is insane.
That's wild.
That is insane.
Yeah.
And next week, I think we may take a break from a regular episode, like a full-on episode. But I think we're going to try to squeeze in a bonus episode reviewing Westworld, HBO's season of television, by Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy. Based on the Westworld 1973 movie. Just completed its first season. The Westworld FM podcast has been kind of sponsoring our episodes lately. You've heard the plug for it at the beginning. I highly recommend checking out that podcast and coming back and checking out our bonus review next week. And having said all that, Tiny, is there any other thing that we need to discuss, or should we call it a night?
I think we should call it a night.
All right. Well, in that case, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
But yeah, so what did you think of Raiders?
I also loved it.
Okay. Oh, fuck. I'm so sorry. Should we read the plot descriptions first?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. Okay. Sorry. Hang on. Let me bring that up here. So sorry. I'm so sorry. And so the plot descriptions are fucking
It's horrible. Yeah.
Oh, I interrupted you for nothing. Okay, hang on. And so yeah, the plot description.
Thank you for listening to The Obsessive Viewer, presented by obsessiveviewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com, or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@obsessiveviewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and follow us on Twitter at obsessiveviewer, at obsessivetiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, obsessivebooknerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.